Good afternoon. I want to thank you for joining us today for this important conversation on cybersecurity awareness and fraud prevention. I'm John Millet, the firm's Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer, and Wealth Advisor. I'm joined today by my colleague, David Clarke. David is our Director of Operations and Chief Compliance Officer. David plays a key role in overseeing the systems and processes that keep our firm running securely and smoothly. Dave will be here sharing some of his insights and experiences. Over the past year, we've had more and more conversations with our clients around cybersecurity. People want to know, how do I protect my accounts? What do I do if I get that suspicious email? Or what steps actually make a difference? This growing concern has weaved cybersecurity conversations into every one of our meetings, and it's also why we're here today. Now, I want to start by reassuring you, our goal today is not to scare anyone. Just like any other type of risk, cybersecurity is a reality we face. Whether it's market risk, health risk, or even weather risk, we can't avoid them, right? We face those risks, and we can't live under a rock to avoid risk. Instead, the right approach is awareness, preparation, and having a plan for how to respond if needed. It's about being informed and prepared, not fearful. By the end of our time together today, we want you to feel more confident, not more worried, with having some practical steps you can put into action right away. Today, the roadmap for our discussion, we're going to start with why cybersecurity matters to you. We're also going to talk about the current threat landscape and how it is so different than it was 5, 10, 20 years ago. We're also going to talk about some of the common fraud tactics. And Dave's going to discuss practical ways to protect yourself, what to do if you are victim to fraud, and discuss some additional resources. Again, our goal is not to make you a cybersecurity expert. It's to give you awareness, some practical steps you can take, and give you the confidence you can handle these risks if they arise. So let's talk about why cybersecurity matters to you. We all see the headlines of major data breaches, right? But it's not just big companies. Cyber criminals are going after you and I. They're going after individuals, and the data shows that. The Federal Trade Commission data shows that fraud, we've lost over $12.5 billion to fraud in 2024. 1 in 3 Americans are being targeted. The reality is, if you've got wealth, if you've got financial accounts, you're a target. You have to be aware. And the fact is, the threat is increasing. With the advent of AI and other technology, it's not slowing down, it's increasing. So let's talk about what is different with the threat landscape. And what's different is the vast amount of data that's now available online. When you think about all the data that is on the internet that's about you, and some of it through legitimate reasons, legitimate businesses, public records, you've got that data that's out there. You've also got data that you volunteered. How many of us are on social media and other platforms where you're sharing data? You see on Facebook all these surveys that come up that are asking for more and more information. What's your favorite color? What year were you born? What month were you born? That is all data that is being collected out there on the internet. And then you add to that hacked information, right? So data breaches where some of your very secure information is leaked. Think about that threat landscape. Now all that data is out there, and if you can digest that about an individual, you can paint a very complete picture. And that's why we're seeing a rise in what's called social engineering, and you're going to hear that topic a lot. So social engineering is not where criminals are trying to hack into your computer. They're trying to hack into you. They're trying to have you give up information or access. And what makes this so much more easier now is the fact that there's such a vast amount of data. So in short, social engineering is about exploiting trust. And the more data that's available, the easier it is for criminals to sound convincing. That's why awareness is so important. You have to understand and recognize the tactics to stop the scams before they occur. So let's just talk about ways you're being targeted. I mean, some ways it's overwhelming. 3.4 billion phishing emails are being sent per day. And we'll talk about what phishing emails are, but understand these are not lone actors who are going after your information, targeting you. These are organizations that are well structured, that are putting a lot of resources using the data that's out there, and then going after you, trying to get more compromised information to get into your financial records. So the fact is, you're being overwhelmed with these types of attempts. 1 in 10 Americans are being scammed. The fact is, in 2022, almost $3 billion was lost just due to email compromises. And as I talked about, social engineering is being such a huge component. And that information allows that criminal to seem like they know you. There's familiarity, there's trust, but there's not. They're using that data that's readily out there. So you have to be aware of the common threats, because again, this is about understanding that, hey, I understand there's a risk, but now how can I have increased awareness? How can I spot some of these things? And that's what we have to do. Is we're being overwhelmed with data. And so we have to, with all these interactions, right, take a step back and say, is this legitimate? Is this not? So let's just talk about some of the big schemes. One of them is phishing emails. And this is something that is businesses we face every day, and also as individuals. So this is fake emails, right? And they're messages that are designed to trick you into doing something. And that could be clicking on a link or downloading an attachment that might have some malicious files, or tricking you to give up personal information, right? So criminals typically, they impersonate banks or financial institutions, the IRS, the Social Security Administration, trusted resources, right? And so this is, and I mentioned the sheer volume, billions of these being sent per day. Think about that. And so it's really important to have your awareness. If somebody's reaching out, why are they reaching out? Some of the common tactics we're seeing is a sense of urgency. You have to act now. Your account is being compromised, or we've noticed transactions that are unusual. They may have links in there that they're asking you to click on a link, right? So typically those are bad links. So there's steps you can take to view those. And sometimes they're also offering you just things that don't seem right, too good to be true. So there's steps you can take. And I will say, at our firm, we actually, have training on this every week, right? Because there's things you can do to spot those phishing emails. So that we call it the SLAM method, right? And this is one I will tell you, Dave runs our cybersecurity training. This is something we talk about on a weekly basis. So think about, as a business, right? We get a lot of emails that are legitimate emails. We get a lot of emails that are false emails. So you as individuals get these as well. And so we use what is called the SLAM method, right? So it's first of all, slowing down, right? Of getting this email that has this sense of urgency, right? Let's look, who is the sender? Why are they asking this information? Right. And so sometimes somebody may purport to be coming from one person, but if you hover over the email, who it's coming from, is it coming from somebody who you know? Right. And if there's links and attachments, right, hovering over those to see, are they potentially harmful? But again, if you're getting a link or an attachment, even from somebody but you're not expecting it, today you have to reach out to that individual and say, "What are you sending me?" Right? Because many times, that person's email may have been compromised, right? So the fact that and can confirm, "Hey, this is coming from my friend Steve," right? You can't just assume that any attachment or link is legitimate. So if you're getting something and you're not expecting it, I'd be reaching out to that sender and say, "Hey, I got this email with these links or attachments." And unfortunately, it does slow down the process, but you have to do that, because if your again, the trusted resource you have, if their email was compromised, right, that fraudster could be sending emails from their email account that have harmful attachments, right? And so it's also looking at the message, raising, this sense of urgency, and also could be threatening. So again, knowing that these emails are being sent out, if you get one, slow down, right? And the problem is we get so many of them. You say, well, it's easy to spot these. They're so fake. But the reality is they could be overwhelming. If you're getting 100 emails a day, it might be that 99th email where you're jumping in your car, driving somewhere, and before you leave, you're in a rush and you get this email, that you're sitting in your car in your garage, and you're like, oh my goodness, I got to do something. It's got this sense of urgency, and you're off guard. And the reality is you have to be on guard all the time, because this is still the most prevalent method of getting you to divulge information, which could be account information, passwords, or clicking on files that could be harmful. So just know, if you're getting emails that, again, are threatening or have this sense of urgency, and they're asking you to divulge information, stop, right? Slow down. Use the SLAM method to identify, is this legitimate? And if you're not sure, pick up the phone, call the sender, right? Have that conversation. So other thing that is happening is websites are being spoofed. And this is actually a slide that Schwab provided us. They've had occurrences this where somebody is creating a fake website that looks exactly like Schwab's, and it's happening with your other financial institutions, right? And so this is where you may get a text message to your phone, or it could be through an email with a link saying, your account, we're concerned about transactions. Click on this link. That you click on, and it brings you to one of these spoofed websites, right? And so you think it looks like Schwab's website, or it looks like whoever your bank is, and you go in and you put in your information, you put in your credentials, your password, and all of a sudden you've now provided that information to a bad actor. So in instances here, if you get a notification, go to a known website. If it's Schwab, don't click on a link in the email or in a text message on your phone. Go to your computer, go to the known Schwab site. Also, if it's from another financial institution, right? Go to a known website. Don't go to the websites that might be included in the link in the text message or email message. Because with today's technology, it's very easy to fraudsters to create these sites that look exactly like the financial institution site. And again, the whole purpose is to get you think you're logging into your own account, you're providing your username and password, and actually it's being skimmed off by the fraudsters, and now they can have access to your account. So be mindful of that. Also, phone and social engineering schemes. And I talked about in the beginning about what social engineering is, right? And so it's important here to understand that, fraudsters, how many times do you get a text message where it's just a short little comment about how you doing today, or, let's talk later, and you have no idea who it's from, right? And so the impulse sometimes is, oh, that's somebody who's looking for me, I should engage with them. But I will tell you that there's a vast volume of these fraudulent messages that are sent out. And once you engage, right, once you start to respond, you've now gone from 1 in a million up to 1 in 1,000. And now that fraudster can be using data that they've social engineered to have real conversations with you, right? And it could be, we've seen the gamut from romance conversations to, your family member is in jail and we need this money, or we're tech support, your computer's been infected, we need to jump on your computer, right? So here you just have to understand that if somebody's reaching out to you, your alert has to go up. Why are they reaching out to me? And again, if they're driving you to an action, right? Like the IRS is not going to ask you to give account information over the phone. Same thing with Schwab. If you get a text or a phone call that somebody says they're from Schwab, they're not going to ask you for account information or password information, right? And if you get something and a call from your financial institution, you should then hang up and call them back at a known number. right? And I know these fraudsters, they try to weave a story of, hey, I'm calling from a fraud unit and you can only talk directly. We can't have you talk to anybody else. Again, red flags have to go up. You have to have the awareness. Someone's reaching out to me. They're trying to create this trust factor because they have known information and they're trying to get me to do something urgently. That is when red flags should be going up. And I know, sometimes, you're sitting in your house right now and you're listening to this and you're like, this is too simple. I would never fall for this. I'm smarter than that. I'm just going to tell you, we've had clients who are extremely smart. Personally, I know individuals very smart who have fallen for this. And it's just a matter of letting your guard down. And your guard could be let down for a minute, but during that minute, you may have just provided a bad actor with your passwords, with two-factor authentication code, right? It happens. So again, on this, you just have to have the awareness that if someone's reaching out to you, right, that going through channels that are known channels. So again, if it's your bank, right, engaging with conversation, call that bank on a known number, open that dialogue. And again, this is one where it affects so many more because almost everybody has a smartphone. Everybody is, getting text messages and conversing through text. So just be aware. Account takeovers are, we're seeing a greater increase in that. And account takeovers, quite frankly, just when somebody gains control of your account online. And it could be email account, it could be a bank account, it could be an investment account. And this typically happens through a number of ways. It could be through phishing. So going back to those phishing emails, they're getting you, it's an email coming, looks like it's coming from a trusted organization. They're giving you a link. Now you're entering that information and that fraudster is taking over your account. And it also can be just good old fashioned credential stuffing. They're maybe your account was leaked through a data breach and you're using the same password throughout. And Dave's going to talk a lot about passwords, right? So now somebody that known password is out there. And so fraudsters see that, and now they're just using that password across a number of different institutions where you might have an account, or they're using software to try to crack weak codes. And so now they get access to your account, right? And there's many things they can be doing depending on the type of account. There's flags that you might know is if you might have it set up where you get a email that password's been changed, right? So if you get that email, that should be a red flag. You should call that organization, talk to a customer service or security, find out what's going on. It also could be a login alert. You may get an alert saying, hey, there's been a login to your account from another area. Also, you may notice unusual transactions, right? So that's why you should always be monitoring bank transactions and brokerage transactions. Because if you see something odd, it may be a sign that someone's gained access to your account. So again, here, common things to watch out for. And again, this is one we've seen an uptick in it, and Dave's going to talk about steps you can take to protect yourself on this. And another common area we're seeing is with tax fraud and identity fraud, identity theft. And these are related because, they're stealing your personal information and using it for different purposes. And it can be your social security number, your date of birth. These typically could come from data breaches. So known data breaches that have happened out there, or you through a phishing expedition, somebody has gotten to you through a phishing email and you've provided that information. Number of ways, even stolen mail, they've got this. So this is where it could be used on tax time, where they can get your information, file a fraudulent return, where they might be, if it's in a refund situation, stealing that refund. Also, they could be using your information to steal your identity, to open up credit accounts and other things where they could gain access to funds that you're going to be responsible for. Dave's going to talk about things you can do to protect yourself there. But again, seeing an increase in both of these types of fraud. I will say the landscape is not small, and it is changing. So these are some of the common schemes that we're seeing right now. But I will say, with the energy that fraudsters are putting in their use of technologies, these will change and these will adapt. So I think some of the common themes is just if you're getting unexpected outreach, your red flag should go off. You should think, what's happening here? So these are some of the common schemes and scams that we're seeing. Just be prepared. And Dave's now going to touch in on some of the things you can do to protect yourself and what to do if you are a victim. David?
John, thank you. Great job there. So as John said before, my name is David Clarke. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer here and the Director of Operations. And so it is a scary world out there as it pertains to cybersecurity. There are a lot of threats, but what I'd like to do now is review some preventative measures, some reactionary measures that we can take just in our everyday lives that will hopefully prevent us from becoming a victim of cybersecurity. So here are some steps just to think about as we kind of go through just our daily routines. First off, identity theft protection and credit monitoring service. If nothing else, please be sure to take a look at your credit reports on an annual basis. They are required to give out a report, at least one free report annually. Also, multi-factor authentication is a game changer as it pertains to cybersecurity. More often than not, as sad as it is, our information is most likely out there with a corresponding password that we used with one or two a vendor or another in our life. Adding multi-factor authentication requires the person to enter an additional code into the website before gaining access to the software, right? That's huge. Using strong and unique passwords. So one thing, and I'll admit, in a past life, I used the same password for everything. That is a pretty poor practice. Technology now has allowed us, through the use of password managers, to create passwords that would be arguably impossible to guess, and it does it instantaneously and is protected within a password manager software. So I know Apple offers a password manager, Microsoft offers a password manager. Don't be afraid to leverage that software to further protect yourself. Another item is just to confirm that all of your devices are up to date with regards to their software. I know Apple comes out with new software, probably it seems like every 3 or 4 months. Microsoft, at the end of October, is going to stop supporting Windows 10. We recently made the conversion to Windows 11. If you're operating off of Windows 10, make sure that you make the upgrade to Windows 11. That's going to be important. This is somewhat old-fashioned, but being on top of the activity in your accounts, John alluded to that earlier. That's probably the quickest way to track fraudulent activity. Review your credit card statements, review your bank statements, review your brokerage account statements. It is crazy, how these fraudsters try to infiltrate their way into your life. They'll start off with a few small transactions, maybe at a gas station, and then all of a sudden it can blow up into something where now you're chasing somebody that has stolen a significant amount of money from you. Be very careful when sharing information via email. Email was never meant to be a secure source of communication. More often than not, if you are sharing secure information, the corresponding vendor, whether it be a bank, healthcare practice, a firm like ours, will most likely have a encrypted method to share information. Ask about that. Before whoever's on the other end of the phone says, okay, yeah, just shoot me your social security number in an email. Say, listen, I'm not really comfortable giving out my social security number. Do you have an encrypted way I can send it to you? Can I get, just figure out another way to send sensitive information without just shooting it out over email. And the last point I want to talk about here is avoid using free Wi-Fi. We have a policy internally that we don't use free Wi-Fi. So if you're at a coffee shop, an airport, oftentimes they give everybody carte blanche access to their network. Don't use it. One alternative is to leverage the hotspot feature on your cell phone. Leveraging the Verizon cellular network is much more secure than leveraging a an unsecured Wi-Fi source. So just a couple steps here, just so you can kind of weave into your daily routine just to further protect yourself. We talked about passwords and multi-factor authentication. Again, these are really game changers. So you can see here, password 123. That's a fairly generic alphanumeric password that the software that these hackers are leveraging now can probably guess that in a relatively short amount of time. The second password, which includes non-alphanumeric numbers, right, would be much more difficult for a piece of software to guess. Honestly, there probably is not a piece of software right now that would be able to guess that. And again, that also goes hand in hand with leveraging a password manager. The password managers normally suggest passwords that are very difficult to guess. And then also the multi-factor authentication adds that additional layer of security that can be the difference between a fraudster gaining access to your account or not. So family discussions, I know this can be a source of consternation at times in families, trying to educate your children about cybersecurity, or maybe speaking to some of your elderly relatives about cybersecurity. It's the world we live in nowadays. Children are, whether it's schoolwork or playing video games, they're on the internet. Talk to your kids. Let them know that they should never disclose their address, never disclose how old they are, never disclose where they go to school to people who are strangers online. Also, as it pertains to elderly relatives, parents, aunts, uncles, oftentimes, after people have been scammed or defrauded, it's an embarrassing situation. And they can be a little bit adverse to disclosing what exactly happened. I would say, work to try to prevent this from happening by opening up conversations in an open-minded fashion. Avoid judgment, and if they're not comfortable speaking to you, encourage them to talk to their banker, financial institution, their accountant. There are other professional people out there, firms like ours, that'll be more than willing to have a conversation with anybody regarding cybersecurity. So Schwab is obviously one of our primary business partners. We collaborated with Schwab with parts of this presentation, and something that we found interesting that they mentioned to us is that they're seeing an uptick in check fraud, right? Good old-fashioned check fraud. So a couple points they made with regards to check fraud is if you write a check, call the counterparty to ensure they've received it and cashed it. Use indelible black ink on checks. That makes it much more difficult to wash checks, where this is where a fraudster picks a check out of the mail, and by applying a solution, they can erase the ink off the check and then make the check out to whoever they deem fit. And then lastly, you make sure that you're monitoring your activity. If you see a check that was cut that you don't recognize, immediately call your financial institution. That's just unfortunately, that's the world we live in. We still need to keep our guard up as it pertains to our financial transactions. So let's talk about how to avoid a scam and some of the technologies that are out there right now that are they're very powerful. So this past year was the first year that email actually surpassed phone calls in terms of the source of fraud. To John's point earlier, they tend to project a sense of urgency. They try to leverage emotion and fear when engaging one of their victims. Just a quick story on this. We recently had a client who received a phone call from his son on his cell phone that was from a New Jersey area code. And it was his son on the other line explaining that he'd been taken to jail in New Jersey and that he needed, I believe it was like $6,000 in order to post bail. And as you can imagine, as a parent, all of a sudden you go into panic mode and your mind starts spinning 1,000 miles a minute, trying to figure out how you can help out your son in this situation. As the conversation progressed with his son, our client, he kind of recognized that something was off, and he hung up the phone with the fraudster. He called his son at a known phone number, and his son picked up the phone. He'd just been working for the day. He definitely was not in New Jersey and definitely didn't need the money for bail. But with the advent of AI and some of the capabilities of these technologies, a fraudster was able to impersonate his son's voice to the point where the dad couldn't recognize it was a fraudster. And almost, it didn't really get close to completing the fraud, but for 30, 45 seconds, a minute, the dad was contemplating sending this person $6,000 to pull the son out of jail. Let's talk about what to do if you've fallen victim to fraud or scam. Block the scanner immediately. Let your financial institutions know, right? We think you should report the scam to local law enforcement, the Federal Trade Commission. Again, let us know about it. There are some measures that we can take internally to further safeguard your accounts. We'll also work with Charles Schwab and their fraud team to make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. We also recommend, if the scam occurred on a computer, bringing the computer into Best Buy, leveraging their quote unquote geek squad to have them run a scan of the computer. And then lastly, just continue to remain diligent as it pertains to monitoring the activity on your accounts. At the end of the day, John makes a good point that they're always trying to, the security systems that are in place and the people that sell cybersecurity for a living, the product that they sell is fortress-like, and the subscriptions that people buy in terms of businesses are fortress-like. More often than not, the fraudster is going to try to target a person. But yeah, and just another quick story, just with regards to another type of fraud that we've seen is just the spoofing of the websites, right? The website looks exactly like the Charles Schwab's website. It looks exactly like the Bank of America website. And all of a sudden, the person is entering information into the website. They've entered their user ID. They've entered their password. They've been convinced to submit their multi-factor authentication code into the spoofing website. And just on the back end of the website, there's a fraudster sitting there collecting the information. So obviously, Charles Schwab is a big partner of ours. They are our primary trading partner. They're our primary custodian. Let's talk about what to do if you feel as though your Schwab account has been compromised in any way, shape, or form. Right? Give us a call. We have connections at Schwab. We'll connect the dots and we'll get them on the phone probably right away. Also, we want to make sure that any pending activity or anything that might be going on in your account, we have an opportunity to stop it as soon as possible. If we're not available, so if you're traveling abroad, if you work in a different time zone, if we're just not here at the office, call one of the Schwab phone numbers. John made a great point before. Let's make sure that we're calling them at a known phone number. We've published these two phone numbers in this deck. Schwab probably has hundreds of phone numbers that they publish across the internet, but just make sure that when you're calling a known phone number. Also, anybody at Schwab is able to, as anyone at Schwab that answers the phones has been trained in how to mitigate fraud, discuss fraud, shut down accounts, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that we're publishing these too. If you have a different phone number from Schwab that you use from your statement, maybe the back of your bank card, call them as well, and they will know how to handle it. Also, if we're not available, right, change your password immediately. This will help. This will help. This will really prevent the fraudster from gaining access to your account if they don't know your password. And then also, please enable two-factor authentication on Schwab if you haven't already done so. I mean, that is a game changer piece of technology in terms of preventing fraud. So as we run through some key takeaways and ways to be proactive and prevent yourself from kind of the shortfalls of cybersecurity, right? Strong passwords, leverage password manager, generate very difficult to guess passwords, coupled with multi-factor authentication, that's an outstanding way to protect yourself from fraud. Be skeptical of emails that come across that you're not expecting. Call the other person that sends the email. Hey, listen, I just received this request from you. What's going on here? And they, we've seen situations where big companies, vendors have been hacked, and all of a sudden we start receiving these kind of random requests. Great line of defense is just call the person and speak face to face to make sure it's a legitimate request. Update the software on your devices. Windows, again, they're coming out with Windows 11. Let's make sure everything's updated to Windows 11. Keep your Android and iOS devices updated. Monitor credit and account activity. And then lastly, if anything happens or you need any advice or you just want to talk a situation through with somebody, feel free to give us a call here. We're always happy to help. Charles Schwab definitely is always happy to help. We have no problem. We'll talk about cybersecurity 1,000 times as the day is long in order to try and prevent fraud from occurring just across the board. So I'm going to hand the presentation back to John here. Just a couple more quick slides.
Thank you, Dave. So
yeah,
just wrapping up. So as Dave mentioned, Charles Schwab, our custodian, major partner, we're certainly taking actions to protect your data, protect your information, using encryption, employee training, multi-factor. Schwab is doing the same. So I want you to know that we take security very serious, put a lot of energy, do weekly training. Schwab does as well. But as we mentioned, there's three legs of the stool. There's us, Bouchey Financial Group, there's Charles Schwab, but there's also you, the client, and we all have to work together on this for sure. We've also have a number of resources we're providing, and this will be put on our website so you can see, access these resources. We really want to thank you for joining us today. Know this is a heavy topic, and but more, importantly, we want to make sure you're walking away with an increased awareness and maybe some practical steps you can put in place. Develop an action plan. But I will say, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to your advisor. They can have conversation with you, pull Dave or myself in, or even Schwab if we have to. So appreciate you tuning in. Next month, we'll be having our webinar, which will be our quarterly market update. So that'll be around mid-month. You'll get a email invitation on that shortly. But again, appreciate you tuning in. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.